um, further delay, just would like to hand over to Anna and welcome her and thank her once again for presenting today. Anna.
Great. Thank you very much, Helen. It's lovely to be here today, and hello to everybody on the line. As Helen said, I'm just going to take you through a overview of Pinterest, some really basic stuff around Pinterest, and then we'll take some questions, and then we'll go through and have a look at a few other elements like building community, traffic referral, and measuring results. So I guess to start off, you've all got the description there. So Pinterest is a visual bookmarking site that was started in 2010 in March. It now has 48 million users worldwide, and 9 million of those accounts are connected to Facebook. So there's a lot of integration with other social media sites that Pinterest does. Last I had a look, there were about 177,000 users in New Zealand. So it's not, it's probably about number 8 on the list of social media sites that are heavily visited in New Zealand. But it is growing extremely rapidly. It is the fastest growing social media network behind Twitter and Facebook. It skews very heavily towards a female audience, and it skews very heavily towards a 25 to 45-year-old demographic. That's not to say there aren't blokes on there. In fact, in the UK, there's some quite interesting stats around a quite high percentage of male users on Pinterest. But like a lot of social media data, the stats are coming out of the States. And in the States, it is definitely a female audience. I think about 80% of users in the States are likely to have children as well. It is, if you've ever had a look at it, and we will have a look around Pinterest today, it is a very visually exciting site. So it is all about imagery, and that is becoming increasingly prevalent across a lot of social media networks. So Facebook has weighted very heavily in favour of images lately. In fact, it's near on compulsory to include an image in a Facebook post these days because it just gets a lot more engagement. And in some ways, Facebook have taken their lead from Pinterest there. Twitter is obviously still heavily text-based, but even they are starting to get into a lot more sort of display around imagery and video. And obviously Instagram, which is the photo sharing app which Facebook bought last year, is part of that whole move towards imagery. So Pinterest from the get-go kind of took the lead on that front, and images are becoming a key currency on social as well as the primary way that people are communicating. Most of what I share on social outside of Twitter is mainly photos, and I'm uploading a lot of that from my mobile. When you log into Pinterest for the first time, you get sort of presented with a default home setting, and it does look like an awful lot of design and an awful lot of this is what my wedding, or I want my wedding to look like. There's an awful lot of kind of craft and DIY and how to turn mason jars into 900 different flower displays. And I think on the surface of it, people write Pinterest off a little bit on that basis, but it is driving huge amounts of web traffic back to people's sites, and it is now driving more web traffic than Twitter. In fact, I think the last thing I saw was saying that it was driving more web traffic than LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube combined. So it's a very powerful traffic referral machine. So underneath all of the really beautiful images is a big machine that is driving people towards website. It's becoming huge in terms of e-commerce and retail, and I'll show you some people who are using it extremely well there. And there are people who are talking about the fact that it is becoming as integral to a strategy around driving traffic to your website as SEO and direct mail referrals as well. So I think it's still a bit of a niche network, and I think like all social networks, you have to evaluate where you want to spend your time and energy. But I do think that there are some obvious benefits in terms of the arts, mainly because of the type of material that you guys are working with. A lot of what you've got is very beautiful and very visually interesting to start with, and I think the trick is around having a contenting strategy, but also looking at what it is that you're trying to drive there, which I would say in most cases would be traffic back to your site and or traffic back to booking mechanisms and things like that. So if we just have a wee look at Pinterest and sort of a breakdown of the users there. So hopefully you can see that, but this is directly from Pinterest, and they have a lot of really great material around how best to use it and lots of information. So their sort of mantra or their statement around what Pinterest is, it lets users organise and share all the beautiful things they find on the web. So there's a very strong emphasis on beautiful imagery. Users can browse pin boards created by other people. It connects everything in the world through the things they find interesting. And we'll talk a little bit about that idea of interest and the way that Pinterest organises its content. They have a little bit of etiquette, but we'll talk about that when we come to discuss how you build community there. But you can see in that age group breakdown, your two biggest chunks are 25 to 44. There is a pretty strong 45 to 54 demographic as well, but it is skewed heavily towards female. So this out of Pinterest, 80% of their users are women. So I think if that's where your demographic is as an organisation, then it's probably a site that is absolutely worth looking at. We'll just go through and have a look at, I guess, some of the basics around Pinterest, how Pinterest works. It has some similarities, I guess, with other social networking sites, but it does have some quite unique features as well. So the fundamentals of Pinterest, if we were to bring up my Pinterest account, so you should be able to see that there, are pins and boards. So a pin is simply an image, obviously, that gets pinned to a board. So it's kind of, I guess, akin to, people have likened it to scrapbooking before, and obviously the physical manifestation is a literal pin board. So I'll show you how images get there, but as you can see, it is a rolling stream of imagery, essentially. I've just brought up the art stream there. So your images, you pin them, and then you've got boards. So this is how people organise their content. And so I have an ironing board, a few different things. And as you can see, I mean, my use is kind of, it's quite mixed. I've got sort of stuff that I really like the look of, things that I potentially want to buy. Women are using it obviously around inspiration in terms of design and decorating. Lots of my friends use it when they buy houses to keep a collection of things that they like and that they might want to buy. But you can use it in lots of different ways. But I think, you know, it is around beautiful imagery, and it is around quite aspirational and inspirational imagery. So you have your boards, and if we looked at, say, this board of mine, I've just called it the beauty all around. You can call them whatever you like, art and design done with communal experience in mind. And that's just a collection of art, essentially, that I really like, that I guess has a relatively sort of interactive or quite tangible feel to it. Other people can come in and browse this particular board of mine, and so a pin I made about a cathedral art installation in Belgium got repinned 6 times. So people come in, they find my board, whether they're following me or following the particular board. So with Pinterest, you can follow users like you would follow them on Twitter. Or you can follow particular boards. So you could come in and not be interested in my ironing board or my TV board, but you might be interested in my art and design boards, and so you can follow those boards specifically. So it means when you go into your home feed, everything you follow, whether it be people or boards, will come up and scroll through your home feed. So if you are a Pinterest user and you also happen to like the Cathedral art installation, you can then repin it, which essentially puts it onto a board of yours. So it's quite basic in some ways in terms of the way that it works. If you go back to your home feed, this is just everything I'm following. I don't know why I'm following South Beach Bikini. Oh, I'm following somebody who repinned it. So it kind of surfaces content in a couple of different ways. So it's either people that you follow personally, or it is images that other people have repinned. So it can be quite overwhelming in some ways because there's content kind of coming at you, unlike Facebook where you know that it is coming from a friend or a page that you follow. Pinterest can kind of push content in lots of different ways. So that's your home feed there, so when you log in, and then on every single image you've got the opportunity to pin it yourself. So when you hit pin it, it'll ask you which of your boards you want to pin it to, and that will show up as a repin on this particular person's image, or you can just like it. So there's some commonality there, I guess, with the way that Facebook works. The way images get to Pinterest is obviously a couple of different ways. You can install the Pinterest bookmarklet, which there are versions for most browsers, so this is the Chrome extension, and Pinterest actually does quite a lot of work to direct and point people to installing these types of things so that pinning is easily. So I can technically go to any website, so I could go to atc.co.nz, and then if I went through and had a look at what's on, and Berlin, and then hit my Pinterest bookmarklet up there, what it will do is it sort of scrapes the site for imagery. So these are all the images that are sitting on that particular page or associated with that particular page that I'm then able to pin directly to Pinterest. So I'll pick that one, and it opens up another window, obviously. So they make it very frictionless, and that, I guess, is part of the power of Pinterest, is they really encourage you to install ways of getting images onto Pinterest. So I pin that to my theatre board in a way that's totally frictionless. The same applies for their mobile and tablet apps. So you go back there. So yeah, so those are just the mechanics, essentially, of how Pinterest works. I guess the other way that you do it is, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about website integration, is a lot of people have pin it buttons built in to their websites now. So just like you would have share this, like this, tweet this, the Pinterest button is cropping up a lot on people's sites, which will let people pin images directly from your site without that bookmark. So if we just go back to the presentation, they took a wee while to get there, but they do now have very good mobile and tablet apps. What tends to happen, or what the experience is with Pinterest, is that people do their browsing on a desktop because there is so much visual content. So if you've got a 27-inch Mac screen, Pinterest looks absolutely stunning. But what they are doing is they are taking photos and then pinning them directly to Pinterest on their mobile phone. So I'd imagine, like most things you've heard about over the course of these webinars, mobile is key and becoming more and more important and more ubiquitous, and the same goes for something like Pinterest in terms of sharing your imagery directly to that site. You can do both personal and business pages on Pinterest, so I would recommend, if you were looking at it from an organisational point of view, that you would look at the business pages. The business pages come with a couple of additional features. One is the analytics tool, and the other one is rich pins, and we'll talk a little bit about rich pinning when we talk about how you direct traffic. Essentially what it does is it lets you tag certain things like price and reviews. So if there's a review of a production or of an exhibition or something like that, you can actually, with a little bit of meta tagging in your own website, you can have those reviews or pricing information sucked through when somebody pins that image as well. So they're trying to make the journey between seeing something on Pinterest and buying that thing as seamless and frictionless as possible. And that's the pressure on Pinterest at the moment, is how they actually monetize what it is that they're doing. So I think you'll find a lot more movement towards supporting business and particularly e-commerce on Pinterest in the coming years. I just wanted to show you a couple of Pinterest boards that I really like. So I had a wee look around at some of the arts organisations, and again, you know, it is a case of deciding which channel is right for you and where you want to put your investment. But Sydney Festival, I think, have done a really lovely job. They don't necessarily have a massive number of followers there, but and followers are important, but they do get some quite good traction and engagement on their photos. So if you go back to their main site, they've got a whole lot of different boards, and you can see that it's definitely not straight out advertising or promotion. It's a kind of combination of things, of stuff they love, so things that might have nothing to do with the festival. Some of the stuff, I guess, that there's other Australian arts organisations that they're supporting. This gallery I really love, which is all of their brochure covers for the last 33 years by the looks of it. So just sharing really visually exciting, really lovely content. So there's one there around New South Wales.
Anna, just, sorry to interrupt, but just to say we can't see these arts.
Oh, you can't see it? Oh, no. Well,
no.
There we go. That's...
Yeah. Thank you.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Yeah, thank
Great.
you.
Okay, so this is Sydney Festival, and you can see they've got a whole lot of different boards there, various numbers of pins, and this is the brochure cover gallery that I mentioned before, which I really like. So I've got the opportunity to go in and, you know, follow a board and not necessarily follow Sydney Festival as a whole. I think San Francisco Museum of Modern Art is doing a really lovely job as well. So they've got about 25,000 followers, and obviously the visual arts lends itself very, very well to Pinterest. But they're doing a whole range of things. They're not just obviously pinning, you know, the art that might be featuring in a particular exhibition, but they've got a board here which is called 2013 Resolve to Create, and it's all about encouraging their community to get creative. They kicked it off actually with getting people to share photos of themselves in the museum and the gallery. So when it comes to building community, you've got the opportunity to do group boards, which let people co-collaborate on Pinterest boards, and it's a really great way of building your Pinterest community. GE, General Electric, not a brand I would have thought would have made a good go of Pinterest, but they have. They do a really great job, and I think when you look at the broad range of brands using Pinterest, you get a very strong sense of what works and what doesn't. So there's not a lot here that says GE. Obviously, it's themed around innovation, or it's themed around how technology enables things and innovation and all of that sort of stuff. But this is one which is I don't know how many of you know the Hey Girl, Ryan Gosling meme. Floats around on the internet quite a lot. And they have set up a Hey Girl takeoff board, which is all about one of the guys who it's kind of old technology, and Hey Girl, Thomas Edison has a crush on you. So they've put Thomas Edison in place of Ryan Gosling. So a really nice way of how you kind of be very current with Pinterest and follow trends and memes online. Sephora are a makeup brand who do an extraordinary job right across the board on social, but these guys are driving serious sales around using Pinterest. So they've obviously packed everything into it. They've got all the meta tagging that brings up prices and all the rest of it, but they also work with their community in a really lovely way. And they just started out by picking a colour and getting people to pin things of that particular colour, and it was obviously a colour they were using in a particular range that they were launching. But you can see, I mean, this is quite product focused. They're a retailer, obviously, but they're also doing really lovely inspirational stuff, how-tos, how to get particular looks, all of that sort of thing. The Music of Viva Festival in Australia, they've got some really nice stuff there. I think there's a really great way for orchestras, or I don't know how many people we've got in that particular sector on the line, but as a way of introducing your orchestra and, you know, really beautiful pictures of instruments. And they've done this particular thing here. They use it a little bit, you know, we love instruments, so photos of really great looking particular instruments. If we go back to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, there's quite a commercial element with theirs in that they've got a board which is specifically about their gift shop. I'm just trying to find where it is. Oh, the museum store. So they are, again, linking people directly through to an online store with the merchandise, and they're getting some really good traction around that particular use of Pinterest. I think we've done about 20 minutes, so it might be a good time to just take a break before I go on to talk about what sort of stuff to pin. You've obviously got, or getting quite a good sense of that by looking at Pinterest. So we might take a wee break for questions.
That's great, Anna. Thank you. Are we able to just see the chat box so I can just see, or the Q&A box, to see if anyone has posted a question or is interested in asking anything? I'm particularly interested in, I guess, the area around driving sales through Pinterest. Mm-hmm. Do you think at the moment that it's less of a, I mean, it's better to go in initially without kind of serious sort of promotion goals and more around sort of building awareness of a brand? Would you suggest that was a kind of good starting point rather than it being too salesy?
Yeah, I think the mechanic of Pinterest lends itself to promotion and sales quite naturally, but the reality is that, like a lot of social media sites, it's not about a hard sell. It's about identifying with your community. So, I mean, I think the key thing if you're going to look at Pinterest is to get an understanding of obviously who your people are, who your audience are, who your visitors might be, where they might sit in terms of a demographic profile, and then get an understanding, I guess, of what your voice is as an organisation. So if you're working in, say, the dance sector, then there's obviously a whole lot of different thematics around dance that you could potentially curate into Pinterest boards. But what I would say is that you can obviously just upload imagery like you would upload imagery to any site without having any track back to websites. And I think that's where I'm seeing a few people when they start out go wrong a bit. I think it's really, really important that everything you put on there links back to your website so that when you click on an image, people come directly back to that particular site. And then you start thinking about, I guess, the more advanced stuff around meta tagging your website in terms of having prices and reviews come up, user reviews, user recommendations when people look at a particular piece of imagery. But it is, I mean, by its nature, it is aspirational and inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just about looking at perhaps the imagery that arts organisations usually have their hands on. So it might be that you've done a beautiful flyer and it's got the dates of the show and the blah, 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 blah. And maybe it's actually just about taking, not posting the image of the flyer, but taking the image out of the flyer context and pinning that. There's really easy tools to add filters and fiddle around with photos these days. So you can quite easily do like an Instagram feed if you have an Instagram account as well.
That's great.
Yeah, so you want things to look really beautiful there, essentially.
I've got a question from Christine Young. Christine is at the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra, and she wants to know, is there a way of still having the Pinterest logo on their website but block some of their photos from being pinned?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is now. So they've introduced some code quite recently which will prevent images being picked up by Pinterest. So Pinterest have done that because one of Pinterest's obvious concerns, and they got pinged for it a couple of years ago, was around copyright. And it's still a big issue, and I'd say there's a large portion of images floating around on Pinterest which are in fact copyright. So there is code that you can now put into your site which will prevent, if you don't want certain images to be picked up by a Pinterest bookmark or via the mobile app, then you can put that in and it will stop it.
Great, that's fantastic. And a further one from Christine. She's wanting to know, can a Pinterest board be embedded onto a website? Yeah,
so you can do that as well. And I guess like all social, you need to treat these places, I think, as channel specific with their own unique specificities, but where you can integrate and where you can do the job of telling people that you're there, there's no point setting up a Pinterest account and not telling anybody about it. So you can actually embed, there's widgets that you can pick up actually directly off Pinterest.com. They've got a whole sort of section around how you do the integration, and you can embed them into your site. You can also embed them into emails.
Right.
And people can pin directly from the emails as well. So they're really big on integration.
Fantastic. And Sarah Lava, she wants to know, rather than code those images you don't want shared via Pinterest, is it possible to code those that you do?
I think at this stage... Yeah, no, I mean, and it's probably a more logical way of doing it, to be honest. I think at this stage the code is definitely around prohibiting particular images. But, I mean, there are certain, like if you go to certain home pages and hit the bookmark button, it won't pick up any imagery. So there is definitely something in the way that images get put into websites that allows Pinterest to pick them up. I think, at the moment it's just about preventing certain images from being skimmed. But, there's still a lot of, it's very easy to pick up an image off a site these days. You right-click and save it, essentially. So, I mean, it's whether or not you want it shared to networks like that. I guess it's about either not putting them up or putting them somewhere else or burying them or not encouraging people to share them. But it is quite tricky these days because people have an inherent kind of desire to share photos without really thinking about whether they're allowed to or meant to.
Does anyone else have any more questions before we continue on? If not, I think that's great, Anna, and we're looking forward to the second half.
Great. Well, we will kick off again. So I think, when you have a look at Pinterest, it becomes, I think, relatively obvious if you spend some time on the site what sort of imagery works and what doesn't. You can pin, obviously, photos, but you can also pin videos. So videos will play within a Pinterest environment as well, and that's where it becomes quite important to, if you're using YouTube, to look at what thumbnails are being associated with your videos. So it goes into Pinterest as a static image. So if you're looking at it around video sharing or getting more views around your videos, you really want a captivating thumbnail to accompany that, and then people can play the video from within the Pinterest environment. It's not, I think it's really important, it's not like a Flickr or a Facebook album. It's not a place to pop all of your photos, or, you know, you might have 69 photos from a community day or something like that. And the place for those is probably Facebook, where, I mean, Facebook is all about people and it's all about family and friends, and Pinterest, on the other hand, is all about the life that you might want to lead. It's very aspirational. It's all about inspiration. So I think some people are quite tempted to put absolutely everything there. And I guess the trick with Pinterest, or one of the keys to Pinterest, is around curation. So picking the right stuff, putting it into the right boards, doing the right kind of tagging, because Pinterest is all about that idea of the interest. So it's all about getting people grouped together around the things that they love. And so it is categorized into interest verticals, essentially. So if you go, if we go and have a look at my setup again, so even, you know, obviously you can get content through via the people that you follow or the boards that you follow, but it also does a whole lot of categorization as well, and these are what they call their verticals. So the things that, you know, geek, art, architecture, design, all of that sort of stuff, weddings, obviously absolutely huge. So that's kind of how Pinterest groups and categorizes things, and I think when you go into the Pinterest environment, it's really important to think about how you might group or categorize your content. There's lots of really great kind of, I mean, I think the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, lots of how-tos on Pinterest, lots of, you know, obviously the DIY stuff, but I think it's worth thinking about Pinterest within an arts context around what you can enable your audience to potentially do. So obviously they can't be on stage and they didn't paint that particular picture, or they're not involved in that particular gig. But if you can find an element of participation for them, and also think about that demographic as well. You know, it's a lot of mums, and it's a lot of mums looking for stuff to do for kids. So if you can build, I mean, that's huge, absolutely huge. Ways to occupy children on Pinterest, it's absolutely massive. So if you can think about, I guess like a lot of social, you know, how do you make it participatory, and then how do you use Pinterest with really beautiful imagery or instructions or font to enable people to be able and participate. It's no different from any of the other platforms in that it is about community, and it's about how you look after that particular community. So if we look at how you might go about building community there, so very similar to Twitter or Facebook or whatever, you're looking to grow and attract people to your boards and your particular account. So building community. First things first, there's etiquette there, just like there's etiquette in any of the networks. They have some quite lovely stuff, which if you go and have a look at the Pinterest blog, you can see it all there. So it's about, you know, being kind, reporting, you know, they've got a big thing around reporting imagery that is inappropriate or offensive, crediting people when you post particular images. So there's sort of a way of behaving there, just like there's a way of behaving with Twitter and Facebook, and it's no different if you're a brand or a business or an arts organisation. Group boards, not bores, and collaboration. So Pinterest gives you the opportunity to create boards that everybody can contribute to, or you can nominate certain community members, so you still have to access people. So you could go to your followers on Pinterest and ask them if they want to join this particular group, and you still have to permission them to be able to do that. And it's a really lovely way, I guess, of encouraging collaboration. and uniting a group of people around particular interests or subject matters. I mean, the big thing about Pinterest is that user engagement, so user repinning or pinning to group boards or pinning, accounts for about 80% of the activity on Pinterest, and 20% of it is, is brand and business at the moment. So it's a very user-driven environment. I mean, boards can give you, that there's sort of two purposes, I guess. One is around, it gives your people, your customers, your community, I suppose, a stake in your brand. And, there's a lot of talk around that with social and the fact that it's a very consumer-driven medium and it's about them and not you. So this gives them, I think, a buy-in around what it is that you are doing. And it also gives you much bigger spread, essentially, of your imagery. So the more people you've got going into a group board environment, the more stuff that's getting pushed out into home feed. So whenever they pin anything to your board, as opposed to just you pinning it as one organisation, you might have 50 people pinning it, and it just broadens your reach in a huge way. I think the trick with group boards is to be very clear around what it is that you're trying to do there, what you're trying to curate, what is the key kind of idea or thematic behind it, and be quite specific about what content you want to see there, so that the people who are involved in it kind of know what the lie of the land is. I would start, if you were looking at starting group boards, I would probably look at, obviously go in and build your community, get some followers behind you, and then look at people who are really active. So look at, just like any online community, you're looking for your super users or your mega fans. You're looking for the people that share absolutely everything that you pin or you post. And it's those same people that you would maybe invite into a collaborative group board kind of environment. You need to do kind of, I suppose, exactly the same stuff that you would do in any other social, well, not even just social media environments, when you're talking about customer contact, whether that be email or on phone. It's still about engagement there. So it's still about repinning the stuff that your people post. So it's not all about you. And also replying, saying thank you when people repin something. It is a visual medium, so it's not heavy on text, but there is still conversation that goes on there, and I think that's partially why people are into social media, because it allows you to have that conversation with your audience. So the same way that you would operate around Facebook and Twitter and stuff is the same way that you would operate on Pinterest. You need to go back to people. Staying current, so we had a relook at that GE board around the Ryan Gosling meme, and that's really important, and I've seen some brands do that extremely well. So seize upon a particular meme or trend or something that keeps cropping up in the news and creating a board around that. And just like any environment, that's where you start getting really viral sharing, essentially, is when you jump on that stuff that's very, very popular. It's a really great access point for a brand if you think about it and you're quite clever about it, and you can curate and create imagery quite quickly. It's a very good way to kind of cash in, I guess, on the current topic of conversation. And give them what they want. That's kind of, I suppose, a fundamental principle around social in general. Again, when you go and have a look at your analytics, and I'll show you the business analytics that are available, work out what people really like. If something gets lots of repins, figure out what it is about that particular imagery that people like and try and do more of it. There's no point flogging a dead horse in a Pinterest environment, and I think because there are a couple of different ways, whether it be a repin or a like or a comment, it's very easy to gauge quite quickly what people are keen on. And so if you stumble upon something, and I think it's like a lot of what happens, you never know what's going to take off, and sometimes it's the weirdest stuff that people really identify with. Coming back to kind of one of the fundamental things around Pinterest, which is the traffic referral, and the fact that Pinterest mainly flies around the idea of linking back to people's websites, so pinning directly from sites, or having the pin it button on images within your own site. But there are a few other tricks and tips around making sure that it does what it should do in terms of traffic referral. So with the business accounts, you're now able to verify your account, which essentially attaches your website or your URL to that particular business account in Pinterest. So it knows that the images that are getting pinned from your site are associated with your business. Use SEO keywords to describe your business. To all of the stuff that you're doing in terms of optimizing your website, a lot of that can be applied within a Pinterest context. And search engines do rank Pinterest pages. And I'd say also do all the stuff around connecting your accounts. So make sure that people can see that you have a Facebook and a Twitter or whatever your other social media presences are. I wouldn't necessarily, even though Facebook and Pinterest integrate really nicely, I wouldn't necessarily do the auto posting stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily integrate what you're doing on Pinterest into your Facebook. I tell people about the fact that you're on Pinterest on other social networks, but it is still quite a unique, specific channel with its own kind of quirks. Include rich descriptions with your pins. So again, it's kind of around the Pinterest search algorithm as much as it is the Google search algorithm. So people go in there and they search for specific stuff. So just like you would keyword a YouTube video so that gets picked up within search within YouTube, it's exactly the same within a Pinterest environment. So make sure you've got really good descriptions in there. It's probably one of the last networks now which doesn't use hashtags. So pretty common convention across something like Twitter, Instagram, Vine, and now Facebook. But Pinterest hasn't rolled out hashtags. So there's still organising content around those interest verticals as opposed to user-driven. So that, discovery is on Pinterest's term in a lot of ways outside of the search capability in there. Keep Google in mind when you name your images. So you don't want an image being posted that says, image 459.jpg. So you need to kind of look at your file names around your images because, again, they are indexed by Google and other search engines. So you want a descriptive file name. You want it, I guess, containing terms which you want, in terms of the content that you want to rank, so whatever the exhibition or the show or whatever it might be. So it is very closely linked with SEO. So I suppose all the same principles that you'd apply when you were looking at SEO around your website, I'd also look at applying around Pinterest. And you can very easily pick up all of the stuff that you need to integrate Pinterest into your own site off Pinterest. So the pin it buttons, which are the buttons that you can put, on the bottom of your imagery, just like any other social network sharing stuff. The widgets, which will let you do that and also let you do a lot of embedding, so picking boards up and putting them into your own website environment or into an EDM environment. And then the rich pins, which is the facility that they offer business pages, which lets you put in a whole lot of other detail. So it's all in the meta tagging of your website, and you can pick up all of that, all the right stuff, just like you can with the Facebook Open Graph stuff. You can pick up the Pinterest meta tagging that will suck through a whole lot of information, so price or reviews or user ratings, and it'll just give it it'll give your image, I think, a much richer kind of experience in terms of the information that people are getting out of it. And then finally, having a look at measuring your results. So with the business pages, it comes with an analytics suite. It's not hugely in-depth, I'd have to say. Essentially what it's doing really is telling you how many people are pinning from your website. So it'll give you the data around, if you've got, if people are just picking stuff up off your website, doing it automatically, or pinning it from your site because you've got a pin it button. It will tell you how many people are doing that. It'll tell you how many people are seeing your pins, so it'll obviously give you your reach stuff in terms of how many eyeballs you're getting around your thing, and then how many people are clicking through as well. So keeping in mind that it is all about driving that traffic. And I guess like any analytics situation, you want to try and look at trends over time, so what's working, what's not working. And then given Pinterest's kind of most powerful mechanism, driving traffic, your Google Analytics become really important as well. So being able to see exactly how much traffic you're driving via Pinterest, and again, keeping an eye on that, because it may not work. There's still a big element of social, and particularly with sites that are still emerging and growing, which is about having a bash if you've got the time and the resource to do that. But again, like anything, particularly online, it's very measurable. It's very easy to see what works and what doesn't. And I think with the combination, I wouldn't look at just having Pinterest Analytics. I think if you're going to use Pinterest and it is about driving that traffic, then it is best used in conjunction with Google Analytics as well. There's a lot of stuff floating around on the internet. There's probably something like 400 million results when you type Pinterest into Google. Pinterest itself provides really good resources. So they have a blog, they have pages set up for businesses, and some quite good kind of really basic talk-throughs of how you get started and how you get set up. So a lot of the etiquette and a lot of the website integration, they'll give you the how-tos on how to do that. They've got a lot of video tutorials as well. There's a lot floating around on YouTube, just like any information around using social networks. There's a heck of a lot of people who've made videos about how to do it. There's the optimizer log, but I think the best thing is to Google it and do some reading and find out, who you think is writing well about it or making videos well about it, and also use it. The best way to get your head around how Pinterest works is to become part of that community and to make the observations around how particular people are using it, keeping on top of what certain brands or organisations might be doing. A million people make a million lists every day about the top 10 brands on Instagram, Vine, Facebook, blah, 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 and it's exactly the same with Pinterest, so you can get a really good overview. And I think it's really important to look outside your sector as well, because there are some quite big brands and some small brands who are doing things like makeup or, GE, there's LL Bean in the States, there's one which is just tractors and cars, and it's extremely popular. But it still gives you a really good sense of thinking a bit creatively or thinking outside the box, I think, around how you might use Pinterest. So there we go. I think we're kind of bang on time there.
That's fantastic, Anna. Thank you so much for that really brilliant and insightful overview. There are a few questions we've got in chat, and I know Vicky's got one or two as well. So I'm just going to quickly go back to one of the initial points that was made during the half-time break around images not being pinnable or actually in terms of copyright issues. Apparently, Anita Levering has said that a Flash website, apparently images are not pinnable from a Flash website. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, or she was sort of saying it could be an idea with
that makes sense because you can't.
Issues.
Yeah, you can't right-click and save Flash images. I guess the only thing around that, it's a good way, I suppose, to prohibit people from taking imagery from your site, but Flash is increasingly becoming a thing that people aren't using a lot because it doesn't play happily with Apple at all.
Becoming more redundant, yeah.
It is becoming more redundant. HTML5, which is the sort of new way of coding which allows for a lot of that movement that Flash was providing on websites is, I think, probably going to come into the fore more. And I mean, I certainly find it quite frustrating going to Flash websites and not being able to pick up images or share images. And I know there's a lot of people who like box images and things within websites too, which can be a bit prohibitive around sharing as well, unless you do some quite specific coding on that. So, I mean, from my point of view, I understand the copyright concerns, but I also think you really have to think about the fact that imagery is kind of king when it comes to getting the word out and what people are sharing on social. So you've got to balance the two. You've got to kind of give people some access to something.
Thank you. And also, Natalie Gilbert was just wondering how she searched for a specific board. So, for instance, General Electric, she said she did a search and it displayed a number of boards of the same name, and she was wondering how she drilled down to actually find the kind of General Electric.
The General Electric. It actually works best via a Google search. Okay. You can, if you go, because you've got three options when you do a search. You can search for pins, so things that are tagged with GE in it, boards, so boards that are named GE, or pinners, and pinners is where you'll usually hit specific users if you're looking for specific users. But it's quite easy, because it is all indexed within search engine, it's quite easy to Google search it and bring it all up as well.
Great, thank you. Nick Moore, he wants to know, is it necessary to have Pinterest and Instagram and Flickr pages for his organisation or her organisation, I'm not sure, or is it better to focus on one visual social media channel and do it well? This is always the conundrum, really, isn't it?
I know.
When organisations are so stretched, you know, do they have to do them all, or should they focus on one visual?
I think it really depends. I think, you know, come back to that original, where are your people? Where is your audience? What kind of profile do they have? What is your voice? What is your brand, I guess? And if it lends itself to imagery and storytelling through images, I mean, Flickr, Yahoo, I think, are trying to revive it, but it's not. To me, Flickr is more of a photo storage place as opposed to, I mean, it still does some quite good Google search indexing, as opposed to a social network. I mean, it does integrate, but it's definitely not as free-flowing or as lovely to look at as the other ones. Instagram, I think, is quite an easy channel to use, and that it's very easy to just take a photo as an organisation once or twice a week and put a nice filter on it, and it looks amazing. And you can actually hook your Instagram feed up to a Pinterest board. So Instagram's kind of for that in the moment, behind the scenes. That's what a lot of brands are doing with Instagram now, is they're doing, obviously, they're quite official social campaign stuff on Facebook. They've got a separate strategy for Pinterest, and then on Instagram they're doing just nice little snapshots, bringing, I guess, a little bit more personality to it, because you can make almost anything look great on Instagram. I do understand that there are so many networks, but again, it just comes back to your goals and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And if web traffic is really important for you and you've got the time to do the right tagging in terms of making those pins a very rich and information-filled experience for people, then I would probably look at Pinterest. Instagram, to me, is quite low maintenance, and you know, it just requires somebody who has a bit of a passion for iPhone photography, essentially.
Thank you. Anna, does that answer your question? Because I know you also put something up there around Pinterest versus Instagram. Don't know if you're able to unmute yourself if you do have anything to add. That's *6. You're unmuted now. Does that answer your question, Anna?
It does, Helen. Thank you. I've just picked your little chat.
Cool. Excellent.
With the video component being added now to Instagram, does that shift the balance a little bit between Instagram and Pinterest?
You can pin video content within Pinterest. Again, I think it's just the difference between those networks and what they're actually all about. So Instagram gives you the ability now to make 15-second videos, which is 9 seconds more than Vine does, which is the video sharing platform that Twitter prefers. So they're both a bit proprietary about it. But I think you've got the capability. If you are really looking at, I think, curating around interest or curating thematically or driving web traffic, because what you're not going to get out of Instagram is you're not going to get traffic to your website because it exists at the moment purely in a standalone app environment. It's got a very small web presence. So again, you know, I think if you've got a lot of rich imagery at your fingertips, or you can create it relatively easily, then Pinterest is probably where I would focus, because I think you can still do Instagram if you want to, but just find a purpose for that channel and make it very low maintenance, because Pinterest probably requires more time around organising and curating.
Thanks, Anna. That's great. Vicky, do you have any questions you'd like to throw into the mix at this stage?
Actually, I'll just be quick, but thank you, Anna. It's just been really, really insightful for everyone. I just wondered if you had heard of anything in terms of any influencer strategies around Pinterest and the way that, say, Twitter is great for identifying influencers with them. Is Pinterest a channel for that at all?
I don't know that it is in terms of, say, being able to easily identify people who might have quite broad mainstream sort of influence. So it's really easy in Twitter to go in and find your radio DJs or your journos or your bloggers, because everybody is, you know, it's all about opinions there.
Yeah.
Whereas Pinterest, it's more around finding your super users or your mega fans. So they might not traditionally fit within an influencer strategy situation if you were looking at them in terms of Twitter, but if they're somebody that is regularly repinning your stuff or loves your brand or da-da-da-da, then that's when you might look at something like a group board, for example, and you give them that opportunity to help have that brand in that stake. So they become very influential within that particular community, and it also enables them to become quite influential or prolific on Pinterest. I mean, there are some people on Pinterest who've got millions and millions of followers, and I don't quite understand how they've got there, because it seems to require an awful lot of resource and time. They're pinning thousands of images all the time, but yeah, it's a little bit different, I think, from an influencer point of view.
Yeah. And I just have one other quick question, which may not be a quick answer, but any advice or tips on running promotions or competitions via Pinterest? I've seen a few examples.
Yeah, so there have been some really great examples around that, and it gives you, like, if you compare it with Facebook for competitions and promotions, which is extraordinarily rigid, and you can't do it with the natural Facebook mechanisms like or share or comment. In Pinterest you can run promotions and competitions just by getting people to pin things. So again, it's a really good way to encourage activity around a group board, for example. So when Sephora launched on Pinterest, that's what they did. They did a big promo around getting people to pin based on a particular colour palette, and they do it quite regularly. Pinterest has some guidelines in and of itself around how you might go about running a promotion or a competition there, so you can go and have a look at Pinterest.com or on their blog. And there are a lot of great case studies floating around online around how people have used Pinterest to promote. I think if you do that, it's not like a regular thing. I think it's either in a campaign kind of environment where you might be targeting a particular demographic, or you might have a really strong theme or something to base it around, or it's around launching.
Yep. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anna. That's fantastic. I'm sure there's a few questions more, but if anyone doesn't have any more questions, we can always field those via myself and Vicky or Sabrina. I'd just like to send a huge thank you to you, Anna, for your time today. It's been really, really great and has given us quite a few starting points for kind of getting involved and finding out more about Pinterest and how we can be placed amongst that community. This was the final webinar in the series of the Optimizer webinars this year. Our next series is going to be announced by the end of August, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's with us today, and I know many of you have been with us over the previous months, and so we're building up quite a community around these webinars, and we're really hoping to continue them next year. On that note, we're going to be sending a final survey just to find out more about how we can structure these in the future, if they're working well for you. And we'll also be asking you about some of the suggested topic areas for the next series. So we'd really love you to let us know your preferences, and then we can obviously tailor the content to best meet your training needs and actually to help build your expertise. And I think we're right on time, so many thanks again, and look forward to speaking with some of you over the next few months once we announce the new series. And finally, thank you again, Anna, for your time, and yeah, and I hope you all have a good rest of the morning.
Thank you very